And so one day the CEO was walking in the building and he saw a man leaning against the wall, and he was very upset. This man is not doing his work. And so he came and he asked the man, "How much money do you make a week?" And so the man was a little surprised, and he looked at him and said, "I make about $300 a week." He said, "Why?" The CEO handed that guy $1,200 or $1,200 in cash, and he said, "Here's 4 weeks of pay, get out of here. I don't want to see you here again." And then the CEO was feeling pretty good. He's walking around, clearing house, getting rid of all the lazy employees. Feeling good about that, he asked somebody, "Hey, do you know what this guy who was leaning against the wall, what was he doing? What was he working as?" And a voice across the room shouted and says, "No, he was a pizza delivery guy who was here delivering from Domino's." You know, very often, when we ask someone about their job, about their school, their work life, they often reply with hesitation or discontentment or frustration because the majority of people find their place of employment actually unsatisfactory. I don't know if I should ask you to raise your hand for this, but we'll wait a little bit for it. But ask yourself this: are you happy with your job right now? Are you happy with your work environment? Are you happy with your school? Are you happy with your school environment right now? Now, going to work is not a very pleasant thing for many people, and there seems to be this dread. You know that 85% of workers worldwide actually hate their jobs. 85% of the people worldwide. And in Canada, here in Canada, 47% don't like. So that means all of you who raise your hand saying you're working, half of you at least don't like your jobs. All right? Half of you at least. If I ask you to raise your hand, most of you, at least half, would say, "Yeah, I wish I was in another job. I'm not happy with it." Now, Monday mornings, there's a picture. Is your Monday morning like this? There you go. Is this your Monday morning where you're like hitting the snooze button? I don't want to get up and go to school. I don't want to go to work. I'd rather sleep in. How many are like that? Be honest. Huh? There's some honest people, right? I don't want to get up. I don't want. Some of you are like this. Go to the next picture. This is how your Monday mornings are. You just want to destroy the snooze button. You just want to destroy that alarm clock that's waking you up. You really don't want to go. Some of you may know the Snoopy cartoon illustration, and this is how a work week is for most people, right? Sunday is a fun day. Everyone enjoys Sunday, at least they don't have to go to work or school, they're enjoying life. Monday is don't speak to me. Don't talk to me. Tuesday is God, get me through this day. You're just trying to make it. Wednesday, you're like, please let me die. Please let me die. Thursday, life is slowly creeping back to you. You start to see the weekend, and you're starting to say, wow, there may be hope. Friday is anticipation. There's anticipation. There's hope that finally Saturday comes, and you go to school, you go to work. Friday comes, you're looking forward to Saturday, where it's fun again. It's the weekend. And a lot of our lives are like this. We go to work during the week, and we're like, oh, I can't wait till Saturday. If that's your day off, or whatever in the week is your day off, you're looking forward to, and it's a very vicious cycle. Even school. You're going to school, and all you can think about is, I can't wait till I'm done my exams, and I don't have to ever do any schooling again, or I don't have to go to take any more tests. Now, to be honest, if you feel this way towards your job, your career, or school, the chances are you're not very healthy as a person. I'm not talking physically healthy, but that is a component. But you're not healthy. You're not healthy. By analyzing 7 million work histories on Canadian resumes in Workopolis database, the emerging trend in career changes and how many jobs Canadians expect to take or have is very astounding. It turns out that as every generation passes by, from the baby boomer generation to Generation X to Generation Y, or the millennials, which a lot of you are, or even Generation Z, where some of you are as well, people are spending less and less time in a particular job. Back in maybe our parents' generation, They used to stay with one job for 20, 30 years. When they retire, they get that nice watch as a gift and so on. It's said that people stay with the same employer all those years, but now Canadians can hold up to 15 jobs in their entire career. So here you can see, how many jobs have you had in a career? 1, only 6%. 2, 8%. 3, 14%. 4, 15%. 5, 13%. Between 5 to 10, which is the majority, is 28%. More than 10 is 16. Now, everyone here are pretty young. How many have had more than one job? See, that's quite a few. And you haven't even reached maybe 30, 40, and you've already had 2 jobs. How many have had 3 jobs? There, see? It's nothing wrong. That's the trend. 3 jobs, 4 jobs, 5 jobs. And most of you will probably go through 5 to 10 or more jobs in your entire life. Right? And it's important to do it with health and with purpose. If not, your life becomes a cycle which affects, the reason, and we'll talk about it, is your career, your schooling affects every area of your life. Your spiritual life, your family life, your relational health, your financial health. It affects every area of your life, because if your work is not healthy, if your school is not healthy, you're not going to enjoy coming to church. You're not going to enjoy serving in the church. You're going to say, well, I have no time. You won't enjoy spending time with your parents or family or children or people, your friends, because you're so stressed. And that's why it's very important to have. Now, here's another question. How many people are switching careers? We asked Canadians, and here it is. How many careers people have in their life? 1, 24%. 2, 35%. 3, 24%. 4, 9%. And more than 5 careers are 8%. And now a career is like if someone was an accountant, and then now they become an engineer. If someone was a whatever, right? If whatever career that you are in, say you're in real estate, suddenly you say you want to become a doctor. It's a complete change. And what they're saying is the majority of people will end up being in 2 or 3 careers. 2 or 3 careers. And you know what happens? People go to university, and some of you may have done that. You studied something, but what you're working in is totally different. And then after you get that first job after university, you end up doing something totally different than the first job that you graduated from university. People switch careers, and the rate is increasing. Back many years back, people graduated from university in the area they studied. They worked in that job for 20, 30 years, and they retired, and that was their life. But our world is changing. It doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It's what we're facing today. And so how do you navigate that? How do you navigate? So it doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have 3 careers. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have 10 jobs. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have 1 job and 1 career. It just depends how you manage that. Now, here are some of the reasons why people leave jobs, and you can take it as leave schools or programs or university pathways. One was their lack of opportunities for advancement, which was the largest, 45%. They were unsatisfied with the leadership or senior management or the bosses, unsatisfied with the work culture and environment, unsatisfied, they were not enough challenge for them. They were unsatisfied with compensation and benefits, unsatisfied with rewards and recognition. You could see the percentage there that as it goes. Not only are people changing jobs and careers often, people are working longer hours. This study here was taken from the US for full-time workers over the age of 18. The typical work hours in a week, for people working more than 60 hours, that's 18% of people. 50 to 59, 21%. 41 to 49 is 11%. Those who work 40 hours are 42%. And those who work less than 40 hours, 8%. That means nearly 50% of full-time employees work more than 40 hours. And more than 39% of people work more than 50 hours. Now just imagine if all of us are working 50 to 60 hours, do we have time to spend with our family? Do we have time to spend at church? Do we have time for recreation, time for exercise, time to even do anything that we enjoy? We don't have time. And why is that? Because vocational health means experiencing your work or your school as a follower of Jesus with a healthy balance between home and work. So whether you're working or in school, you can take that work and put it as school. Means experiencing your school as a follower of Jesus with a healthy balance between home and school. Some people, their whole life is school. Some people, their whole life is home. But you need a balance so that you could be a successful and a whole human being. Now, being healthy in our vocation doesn't mean your current job or school is the best or the only thing God has for you. So I'm not saying that one job you find, this is God's job for you and you don't have to worry about anything. It doesn't mean you'll love 100% of everything either. So when I say that being healthy in your job doesn't mean that your job is 100% the best thing. But if you're around 80 to 90%, then you're good. They often say, in most careers or most jobs, you're going to love 80% of it and 20% you're going to do things you don't like to. And that's actually healthy. Because part of your development is learning to do things you don't like. How many agree? Right? You don't want to be cleaning your room when your parents tell you, but it's good for you, right? You don't want to go to work and your boss says to do some paperwork and paperwork is not your thing, but it's good for you. You will never find a job that is 100% everything you love about it. If you do, please tell me, because I really don't know if you're going to. There's some part of every job where you're not going to like. But if it's only 10 or 20%, then you're good. If it's the other way around, where 80% of your job you hate, then you're in the wrong place. And you have to really reconsider it. And finally, that you will experience success or financial reward in your career. It doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed that either. And doesn't mean that it's unhealthy for you. So let's begin by first talking about purpose. I was going through the questions in preparation for it. But one of the questions, and maybe I can use this time to answer that, so let's say if a time or question is, does God have a specific will or purpose for my life? Like, is there something unique that I only have to do, and if I don't do it, then I haven't done God's will? So the answer is yes and no. Yes and no. All right? Let me first phrase it in this way. We have to see what's God's purpose for us. And I'd like to share this in 3 ways. God has 3 purposes for us. There is, not for us, but God's 3 purposes. There is God's ultimate purpose, God's universal purpose, and God's unique purpose. So let's start with God's ultimate purpose. God's ultimate purpose is the new creation where God will live with his creation in harmony and peace. That happens at the end of all time. The eternal purpose of God, where heaven and earth are together. God is dwelling with his people. You read that in Revelation where he says, heaven came down to earth and they said, hallelujah, the Lord God is with men and we will dwell together forever and ever. That's his ultimate purpose. No matter what happens on this earth, no matter what happens in life, it's coming to that end. That's his ultimate purpose. God's universal purpose is for you and I. In Genesis, he created man to be image bearers, reflecting God's love to creation and reflecting back to God the praises of all creation. That's for all of us. Right? God has created humanity. In Genesis chapter 1, he says, God created us in his image. And it says there in Genesis 1:26 and 27 that we would reflect his image and his glory and his love to his creation. And so his universal purpose for all of us. But then God has given us a unique purpose. And that unique purpose is he's given us spiritual gifts, abilities, talents, a heart or passion and experience. And I'll quickly share that shortly. Where each of us are uniquely created by God. So you are unique. You are unique. And God has created you with unique talents and abilities. Now, does that mean that you only have this one path that There's this only one job. If I miss that job, then suddenly I'm off of God's course. There's this only one person that I have to marry, and if I don't marry that person, then whoever I else marry, I'm off track, and then for the rest of your life, you're out of God's will. No. Right? God doesn't work like that. God gives you choices. And that's why you have these frameworks. God's ultimate purpose, God's universal purpose, and God's unique purpose. But that unique purpose, how do you know what God's will for you is? Looking at the gifts, the talents, the graces, the passion, what you are created with. Right? Some of you have certain gifts and talents, and you're created that way. And you need to find out who you are and fulfill that for God's purpose and glory. So it's not like you only have this one path, and if you go off that path, then you can never get back on it again. Right? And then you're stuck. If you missed that job, you've got to pick up that phone call for that employer, and that was the only job that God had for you, and that's His only will for you, and you missed it, and for the rest of your life, you're out of the will of God for good. God's not like that. He gives you choices, but you stay within the framework of His path and His will. So let's continue here to understand the 5 elements that make us all a person. Okay, there's 5 elements, and it's called shape. Right, it's a little bit off the first letter, so you can guess. What's that first letter? Spiritual gifts, or S. Second word is, you guess? Heart, right? The third, abilities. Fourth is personality, and the fifth is experience. So all of these components make us up who we are, make us who we are. Spiritual gifts, God has given each of us at least one spiritual gift as a follower of Jesus. God has given us a heart or a passion. What motivates you? You know, for some people, they're motivated to rid poverty from this world. Some people are motivated to help care for those who are sick. Some people are motivated to make sure that, there's better technology for the future. Some people are motivated to share, business ideas to make our companies and our economic world better. Each of us are motivated with something. What's your passion? Some of you are motivated by athletics and you want to become an athlete. Some of you are motivated by cooking and you want to be a chef. Some of you are motivated, all these different things motivate you, and you have to look and see, what is your passion? What's your desire? What is that? Coupled with your spiritual gifts. And then your abilities. Each of you are talented, right? Each of you are talented in different ways. Some of you are musicians and you're very talented. Some of you are not musicians, and that's okay because you have a different talent. Some of you can code very well and make a computer program like this. Some of you are very smart in math and can balance a balance sheet like this. And you could do so many things. Some of you are very creative and can paint a picture where others can't, and draw and do. So you have your talents and gifts given by God that are unique to who you are. And then you have your personality. Each of us are different in the patterns of our thinking and feeling and our behaving. Some of you are extroverts. You are willing to go out there and talk to anyone and be friendly to everyone. And some of you are introverts. You're shy. You don't want to go out there and talk, but doesn't mean you're a bad person. You're just introverted. You gain your energy from being alone. Some people gain their energy from being with other people. That's how you know the difference. Some of us, if you're with people and after you're done that, a party or you're at a function or you're even at church and you go home, you're exhausted because you have to meet too many people. It's not a bad thing. That's just who you are. Some of you, if you don't come to church or in a social gathering, you feel lonely and you feel upset and you don't feel excited because you need to go and meet people and talk to people. You're created differently. That's your personality. And each of us are different. And then our experiences, events and situations in life that has been used to mold us into who you are. Some of you have grown up in different countries. Some of you have grown up in different households. Some of you have gone through tragedy. Some of you have gone through, great times of prosperity. Some of you have come from households where there wasn't a lot of money. And some of you have come from households where there's lots of money. Some of you have come and gone through experience of death of loved ones. Some of you have gone through sicknesses or sicknesses with family members. All those incidences in your life form who you are, affect how you function in your work life, in your school life. Each of us are different. That's one thing very important to realize. Paul says that if we compare ourselves amongst ourselves and measure ourselves by ourselves, we are not wise. The one thing is important, don't compare with other people. Don't say, wow, they got a good job. How come I don't have that good job? Or they got into that university program. How come or wow, they get A's and I'm just getting B's. How come? That's not fair. Well, I'm sorry, we're all different. And that's why in the first sermon today, realize who you are, your identity in Jesus, so you don't get perturbed or upset and irritated with God or anyone else because you're different. Just realize you're special to God. And each of you have a calling and a purpose to fulfill. So this shape, as you look here, helps you to find your ideal career. So right now you can examine your heart and see, are you in the right career, the right job, the right school program, the right university degree? Is this really for you? And we're going to talk later on. Sometimes we choose stuff because our parents said so, our culture says, or you thought it was fun, or you thought it was easy, or it was a cheaper route, or maybe this job was the first one that offered you this job, or maybe the job paid you the most, so that's why you took this job. So many factors in choosing what it is. But what I share here, the shape, this will help you to see who you are and what type of career and what type of profession you should be in, your spiritual gifts. What are your talents? What is your passion? What's your personality like? What's your experience? Right? If you're a complete introvert, you don't want to talk to people, I wouldn't encourage you to go into public office and run for, the Prime Minister of Canada. Right? Even though you'd be like, wow, it would be really nice to be a prime minister one day. If that's not your personality type, you're just going to be miserable. Right? You have to know what it is, what your personality type is. Say you're a person who enjoys being with people, helping people. If you go into a career that you're in, say, I'm not going to put, my dad was an accountant, but say you're an accountant that you're behind a computer desk all day long, typing numbers and working on spreadsheets and balance sheets and doing that. And if that's your job, but you love to be with people, you get excited, you enjoy connecting, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable. Because you chose a career based on maybe convenience, what people said, maybe you thought it'll pay you well, but your personality and your gifting is different. And that's why a lot of people, we mentioned today, more than 50% of Canadians are not happy with their career. Because they haven't accepted who they are, their personality, their experience, their abilities, their heart, and for us as Christians, our spiritual gifting, to know what God has called us to. Right? And how God works in our lives. Now let me give you 3 things to show us what our profession or career, so those who are in school, to realize why you're in school and eventually to get a job. Why do we work? Why do you work? Before you put the slide, let me ask, tell me, why do you work? Give me some reasons. Money, yes. Why do you want to make money? To live and to provide for whoever are dependent on you, family or anyone else. So that's right, that's one of the reasons. There's 2 other reasons. What are the other reasons? Clearly, money is the most important, right? Why do you work? Actually, money is the 3rd reason. There's 2 others that are very important. You're in a church. Tell me the other number 1 reason. What? To honor God. What did Paul say, 1 Corinthians 10:31? Whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. Remember what I mentioned to you, God's universal purpose for us is to be reflectors of Him. And so whatever we do is to reflect God in wherever we are. And so it's to honor God. The second thing, 3rd is money, provide. You can put the slide now. For the 3rd thing is to impact others. So honor God by reflecting and glorifying Him, impacting others at work and community. Please don't go to work, please don't go to school and not talk to anyone and impact their life. I appreciate a lot of the questions, and we'll talk about that, is how do I talk to my friends who are non-Christian? How do I communicate to them about who Jesus is? How do I talk to a friend who is a Muslim? Or how do I talk to a person who's unsaved? How do I talk to them? And so one of our purposes, God creates us. He puts us in places of work and school for that very reason. Why are we working? It's not just to earn, because God could just give us stuff and we don't have to. He puts us in communities, in different people in our lives. Let me ask you this question. How many of you have a friend, I'm not saying it has to be the closest friend, but have someone you know at school or at work who's not a Christian? Raise your hand. Everyone, right? I don't think any one of us here who are in school or in work has a friend or a colleague or someone you know, right, who's not a Christian. We all know that. And why does God do that? He places us, he says, we are the salt of the earth. God places us in places so we can influence and impact others. So remember that when you're choosing your careers, when you're in school, it's not all about money, because then we become selfish, individualistic, inward-focused people, and that's not who God has called us as Christians. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. So remember that. Whatever career you do, whether it's behind the desk or whether it's out meeting people, if you're behind a desk, you may say, well, I'm not going to meet lots of people, but you will meet people. And you are called to communicate that. So those 3 reasons why we are to work. Honor God, impact others, and provide for your family. Now, God has ordained work even before the fall. In Genesis chapter 2, Adam and Eve were given a job to take care of the garden, steward God's creation. Not going to go through all of those things, but in Genesis 2:15 we read that. Jesus gives parables about money and people working in agriculture, investing money. He gives a parable of a person who's given different talents or money and go there and multiply and grow it in business in their exchange world and gain more money. He says, engage in business until I come. He gives that parable of a nobleman went to a far country, gave talents to his servant. So here we see God wants us to work. In Paul, he says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10 to 12, he says, if you're not willing to work, this is very strong, he says, don't eat. Now, this is not those who are unemployed or those who want to find job, but because of their health or they can't get an employment. No, it's not those. It's those people who says, you know what? I don't want to work. Thank God I live in Canada because they're going to give me some money, so I'm just going to sit back, watch TV, eat, and enjoy life. Those people, God says, and Paul writes and says, if you're unwilling to work, then don't eat. Because God wants us, he commands such people and urges them in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and work to earn their own living. Right? So all of us, to understand that, I'm sure all of us know that, and none of you are here saying, well, I don't want to work. I'm going to, ask my parents to provide me a house and I'm just going to be fine. No, that's not how it should be. God wants us to work hard and not be lazy. And God has caused us to work and provide. The story is told of a young businessman who started his own firm. He rented out a beautiful office and furnished it with antiquities. And he was sitting there, and suddenly he saw a man coming out from the outer office into the inner office. And so he was hoping to look like he was a hotshot. He just started this. He wanted to look like he was busy. So he picked up the phone and started to pretend he was talking and making some big business deal and pretending he was talking. No one was on the other line. He started talking. Some of you may be wondering, maybe you do that at school. You're just pretending you're working and the teacher's walking by. Or you're at work and around the computer, but you're looking at Facebook or Instagram, and then you're going by and you're not really working. You're pretending you're working, but you're really not. And suddenly, he threw out these huge numbers, 1 million, 4 million, 3 million, and then this man walks in, and he hung up, and he said, can I help you? And the man said, yeah, I'm here to activate your phone lines. Some of you are a little slow on that. But he was pretending. He was pretending. And there's a very important truth to remember regarding our jobs. Our vocation is not our identity. Right? So your vocation, if you have that slide, is not your identity. We talked about in the first sermon. But it's the vehicle in which you are able to accomplish your purpose and reflect your true identity as God's image bearer and child. Right? And so we have to be very careful that our work in our school doesn't become our identity. Because we may end up overworking to prove that this is who I am and I deserve respect. Why is it that people end up working and working and working? Because they're out to gain respect, and they say, well, this is who I am. I am my career. And they work and they work and they work, and it's a very dangerous thing. Or we become very unhappy with our place of employment because we didn't get that promotion. And then we get upset. Or we become jealous of someone else's career and we try to grasp for it. And so the question is, how are we? Because as I mentioned, your work life, your school life affects your financial health, your relational health, your emotional and mental health, your physical health, and most importantly, your spiritual health. Your spiritual health. So I'm going to give you a few keys and then I'm going to close up, but I'm going to spend a few moments talking about what happens if you're facing issues with your work. And so some of the feelings that you may experience are frustration. Some of you may be feeling pressure, anxiety with school, a fear of losing your job. Some of you just on the back of your mind thinking you're going to lose your job. Some of you may be upset that you're not getting promoted, or you're having relational issues with coworkers, or you're not getting fairly compensated in this job. You're thinking, wow, I'm working so hard, they're not paying me enough or fair enough. Or you're a business person, you have your own business, and it's not going well. What do you do? What do you do if you're in work or in school and you're feeling these feelings? So I'd like to highlight 3 important things to do. Is to evaluate, engage, and execute. Evaluate, engage, and execute. What do I mean by evaluate? What do I mean by evaluate? Evaluate means take that issue and see if it's one of these 3 things. This is the filter. Is it momentary? Is it a movement issue? Or is it a maturing issue? If it's momentary, for example, you go to work and your boss gives you a hard time. It may be only for that project or for that day or for that issue. And so you shouldn't overreact and say, well, that's it, I'm done. Or you're at school and you fail a test and you're like, well, I'm going to change my program. Right? Because it's only a momentary issue. Right? When you're evaluating, ask yourself, is it just for this moment? Do I need to react and change the course of my life just because of this momentary issue? Or maybe it is a movement issue. Maybe it is time to leave the job or change the program. Or maybe it is time to change your career. It's time to take that step. Maybe these signs are showing it to you. Or thirdly, maybe a maturing issue. That there's something happening to make you a better employee or employer, better boss, a better coworker, better CEO, a better student. Maybe what's happening in your life is to mature you. And what ends up happening is a lot of people, they move before they're matured. And they carry the same thing to the next job or the next program or the next university or the next career, and they've never matured because they keep moving instead of maturing. And so we need to ask ourselves, is it momentary? If it's not momentary, if it's something that's going to continue, then you say, well, is it there to mature me or is it time to move? So evaluate that. Wherever you are in your school life or work life, ask yourself. The second is engage. Engage means start talking to others. And who are the people to talk to? Talk regarding your faith. Talk to God. Ask God. Talk to wise and godly leaders in your life and ask them for wisdom. Talk to family, parents, siblings, children, spouse, uncles, aunts. Talk to people that love you. There's no one who will love you more than your own family. Talk to them because they will have your best interest in mind. And finally, talk to your friends, especially those who are in similar career paths or school or people who've gone through certain things in your life. They're great people to talk to. Finally, execute. So if it's a momentary thing, wait and be patient. I've seen far too many people react to a problem in their job or in their education and do something rash and very quickly cause more pain. If it's momentary, wait, be patient, things will change. Second, if it's a movement issue, start looking for new opportunities. Get on LinkedIn or Workopolis, start looking for what are the jobs out there. If it's your studies, go and talk to your counselor, your guidance people and say, look, I'm struggling in this. Is there a better pathway for me? I need to move. I don't want to keep failing. This is not really what I'm meant to do. Or if it's a maturing issue, then get better. Work harder. Change your attitude. Change the way you work. Change your study habits. Instead of waiting for the night before the test, maybe start studying a little longer, a couple of weeks before or a few days before. Change whatever you're doing right now because it needs to be matured. So what are the three things? Evaluate, engage, and execute. A lot of people like to evaluate. They think and think and think. They don't talk to anyone, and nothing happens. They don't execute. Some people execute without evaluating. Some people even execute without even talking to anyone, which is very dangerous. All three are necessary. Don't be evaluators, just thinking, oh, I wish I had another job. I wish I had, I've talked to people, they hate their job, they're not good for that job, but all they do is just say, I just don't like it. I'm like, well, why don't you move? Well, I've never really thought of that. They just talk about the negativity of it. So don't be one who just evaluate. Engage, and then execute. Make some change. Or don't be people that just continue to execute without engaging or evaluating. Now, what happens? What happens if you need to make changes? What happens if you need to mature? Or what happens if you need to just wait? What happens? What are the foundations? And I like to mention these. What are the foundations or the pillars of your profession? What helps you to get through all this evaluating and engaging and executing? What helps you to get through going to work Monday morning, studying for that exam? What are the pillars of your profession? I'd like to give you three basic pillars of your profession. What will help you to have a good, successful educational life and career life? The first is keep Jesus at the center of your work, the purpose and motivation for succeeding, and the foundation of your career. It's so important. And what do I mean? It's not a cliche. It's not just, let's just keep Jesus at the center. No. Keep Jesus at the center of your work, the purpose and motivation for succeeding. Why do you want to succeed? Is it so that your name becomes popular or you make $1 million more? Or is it because whatever? No, that's not your motivation. Your motivation is Jesus. And He's the foundation of your career. He's the foundation. That's why in Colossians chapter 3, 23 and 24, Paul writes, work willingly and whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, the master you're serving. There's a story of a man who was applying for a management job at the city of Toronto as an accountant. And he was facing 17 people with professional degrees, right? CMA, CA, CGA. I think they've all combined it to one now, but back then you had 3 different degrees for accountants. And so 17 people were there applying for this management job at the city of Toronto. And this man he went to a community college, a local community college, 2-year diploma, and he was applying for this job. And the employer asked this man, what's your best quality? So let me ask you. I don't know if anyone wants to answer. If I asked you, what's your best quality as an employee, what would you say? Any hands? Anyone willing to say? If I asked you, what would you say? If I hired you, this is what you're going to get. If Pastor Jaron said, I'm going to hire you at this church, and they said, what's the best thing you're going to give to me? What are you going to say? Anyone? What's your best quality? Able to convince? Okay. That's a good quality. Anyone else? What's your best quality? What can you give to a job? Wow, you guys don't have any best qualities, eh? No one here not to hire anyone from this place, right? Only one person was willing to give me their best quality. What's your... Huh? Yeah, well, people are too humble, that's what you're saying? Okay. Oh, that's your... Too humble or just humble? All right, we got someone who's too humble. Anyone else? Adaptable, okay, good. Hardworking, dedicated, team player. They're all great answers. And if you were, and some of you have gone to job interviews, and I'm sure they've asked you that, right? And you've probably said all of those things. I'm a team player, I'm dedicated, I'm hardworking. If you hire me, things will change. And we give all these wonderful qualities. So this man was asked by his employer to be, what is the best quality you have? And you know what he said? Very unique. This is for the city of Toronto, right? At City Hall asked, what's your best quality? He said, I will do everything as if I was doing it for God. Right? This is to the city of Toronto. I will do everything as if I was doing it for God. And you know who got the job? It was not the 17-degree holding accountant. It was this man who had a local college diploma. Nothing wrong with the local college diploma, by the way, because today it's not about your education. It's about your EQ, who you are, how you relate to people, how you function. And so it was a wise answer, and he got the job. He got the job. How do I know that? It was my father, right? It was my father. So he worked in the city of Toronto in accounting in the management area. He's no longer alive today, but at that time, in the 90s, that's where he worked. And so I know that as a fact. And so I'm not saying go and answer that for all your jobs and you're going to get a job. But use your wisdom and use your heart and be honest and be who you are. But what I'm trying to say is if you keep Jesus as the motivation, you will be a success. Because Paul says whatever you do, you're doing it for God, not for people. Or you are doing it for people, your bosses and your employers and your businesses and your companies. But your motivation is not for them, but it's for God. And that's a very important pillar for your foundation. Remember that. Remember. The second, here's another funny, little funny story of a man. He was actually hiring for an accounting position, and he was conducting interviews for all the future hopefuls. And the first accountant walked in, and so the boss asked him, what's 2 + 2? And he said, 4. This accountant replied, 4. Said, I don't want to hire you. Goodbye. And he was a little surprised. Isn't 2 + 2 4? And he just said, goodbye. And so the next candidate walked in, and the boss asked him, he said, what's 2 + 2? He replied, said, 4. And the boss told him, get out of here. And he was just confused as a second person, and he said, what, isn't 2 + 2 4? And he said, anyway, if that guy doesn't know what 2 + 2 is, I better not work here anyway. And so then the third candidate walked in and said, and the boss asked him, what's 2 + 2? And the accountant replied and said, anything you want it to be. And he was hired. You see, it talks to us about our ethics and our integrity. Because if you're doing it for God, you're doing it for Jesus, you are going to be a person that works with ethical standards and integrity. When you're in school, if you're doing it for God, you're not going to cheat. Why? Because you're doing it for God, not for your own success. Because if you're doing it for your own success, you're just going to cheat. You're going to do whatever you can to get ahead because you don't care about anything else but yourself. And you won't succeed because one day it'll catch up to you. But if you're doing it for God, you have ethics and integrity. It's hard because everyone else is cheating, everyone else is lying, everyone is falsifying on their resumes, everyone else is doing wrong things. How come they get their jobs and I have to do the right thing and I don't get hired? I know that. People say that. Say, look, they falsify their resumes and they're getting the jobs and I'm doing everything right and not succeeding. The question for you and I is, who do we love? Who do we serve? And who are we accountable to? The second thing for a good pillar for your profession is live with balance. Find a good work life or school life balance. Right? There's a lot to talk about burnout and stress. Time is escaping us, so I don't want to go into all the nuances of it, but burnout affects us physically, emotionally, spiritually. Stress. Now, there is a good stress and a bad stress. Okay? Stress is a normal, non-specific response of the body to situational pressures or demand that is part of everyday life. However, it could lead to chronic stress. So let me tell you the difference. There's stress and there's chronic stress. To experience stress, normal stress is actually a good thing. Now most people say, what? Stress is a good thing? Yes, normal stress is a good thing. Why? Because it's actually your body's defense mechanism to tell you that something is wrong. If you live completely stress-free, it's like a person that has no feeling of pain on their body, right? It's actually dangerous. So normal stress is actually good because then it tells you when I'm at work, wait, something is wrong, I shouldn't be working this much. Or something is wrong at school, this shouldn't be right, because stress is your body's defense mechanism to tell you that there's something wrong. Now, if you don't deal with the stress, it becomes chronic stress, and that's where it's dangerous. Unresolved stress becomes chronic stress, and it's very, very dangerous. And that starts, you have these symptoms, and I'll go through some of these symptoms if you have chronic stress. Decision making is very difficult, right? You have excessive daydreaming. All the time you're sitting there writing at school and you're taking notes and suddenly, I don't know where you're at. And then you come back at the end of class and then you're writing your last sentence and you wonder where you've been. You've been to Australia, Austria, and around the world, and then you're back right at the end of class. Or there's increased use of alcohol or prescription drugs. People go through other things to compensate. Your thoughts constantly trail off. Normal people, their thoughts trail off, but this is constant excessive trailing off. So don't be like, oh my gosh, right now through your talk, I was thinking about what I'm going to eat when I get home, and no, you don't have chronic stress. That's just normal part of life. Excessive worrying, outbursts of temper, where suddenly you're at home and someone just asks you a question and bang, what happened to you? Because you're dealing with a lot of chronic stress. Paranoid ideas, forgetfulness, feeling inadequate, reversal of usual behavior. Have you ever been with someone, you're like, wow, they're not normal. This is not who they are usually. Social withdrawal, problems sleeping. You have a hard time to sleep. Or you're feeling anxious, irritable, or depressed. These are signs of chronic stress. And so we need to learn to live with balance. Live with balance. And what is work-life balance? Here are some things to make sure you have some balance in your life. Have a Sabbath, a day off. God has called us to have a day off, right? Day off. Don't engage in work. Sleep. Make sure you sleep well. Healthy eating. Exercise. Spend time with friends and family. Enjoy a hobby, something that you enjoy. Some of you may enjoy music, crafts, whatever. Do something that you enjoy. Recreation and entertainment. Enjoy the things that cause you to recreate and to entertain yourself to be in a good place. I'd like to just do a little quick, another demo of work-life balance. I have a cup here. Don't worry, water's not going to disappear in this cup. Point is to have water in here. So I put some water in this cup. So if I don't have good work-life balance, if I shake and I move, what's going to happen to that water? I'm not going to do it, but what will happen to that water? It's going to shake, right? Maybe I should do it so you don't think there's anything special with this cup. But if I go, sorry, whoever's cleaning this up, I forgot about it. It's water, right? It's water that comes out. And that's what ends up happening in life. When you are not balanced, things start to come out from your life. You just dry this here. And then I have this little holder here. Nothing special, just a regular holder. I want to make sure it's not wet, so flip out. So I have this holder here, right? And in this holder, it holds my cup nicely, right? And this holder can speak of living with balance, right? And when I live with balance, the water doesn't... I'll come up here, so those who are scared of their musical instruments won't be, right? See, is the water coming out? All of you science majors will know what I'm doing, but right, there's nothing to it. There's nothing sticky, nothing there. But the why is there? Because there's balance. And so when you live and function in your work or your school with balance, things are not going to fly off and fall off. You're not going to go around. I can keep doing this, but I get back to the sermon. But so it can go there. I would do some other stuff, but I don't want to get anyone wet in case it flies off. But you see the point, right? Work-life balance. I go faster and faster. Steve is like, be careful. Right? So I'm just to show you how balance functions. Helping to have a healthy balance. And finally, the last thing is serve your neighbors. Impact other people. Because God has called us to do that. That's how you have a good pillar of profession. If your job is only to make money, if your schooling is only just so that you could say, I have this degree so I can get a good job and support my family, which is all important, but if that is your only reason, then you're not honoring God and fulfilling His purpose. Because your calling and my calling is to serve our neighbor, right? To serve our neighbor. I will ask the worship team maybe to come as we prepare to sing, or are we going to go into the Q&A right after? I'm not sure, but maybe we can sing a song, yeah? So they can prepare to sing. I'll close with this story of a man named Christopher Wren. He designed St. Paul's Cathedral in London. I'm not sure if any of you have been to St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And they were asking people, construction workers, what are you doing? And some workers said, I'm laying bricks. Others said, I'm carrying stone. But a man who was mixing cement, he replied and said, I'm building a magnificent cathedral.
I think it should be fine.
You see, because he had a bigger picture of what was happening. So some people, they just focus on the minutiae and the problems and the struggles of their life. But others, when you realize part of God's big purpose, that whatever you and I are doing, it's part of God's ultimate purpose, then you will be able to live with health and healing. Where you're not pressured to do something because parents said so, culture says so, was easier, was better paying. That shouldn't be the filter of your profession, of your future. It should be to honor God, to live with balance, and to impact other people. And it's very important to understand that, so you could be healthy in your job and healthy in your school, and that you can also be people that are healthy relationally, financially, mentally, emotionally, in every area of your life. You and I would be healthy people. So as the team starts to play, why don't we stand as we sing and as we prepare our hearts to worship God.